And good morning. We are live on the Falcons Podcast across all channels this time. We don't even have to wait. So welcome in, everybody. This is the Monday morning, June edition, mini camp edition of the Falcons Podcast. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host. And today I have a special guest, Daniel Flick of All Falcons. Does some work over on SI's Atlanta Falcons site. And when I say does some work, I'm actually selling him short. He does really, really good work on the Atlanta Falcons site on Sports Illustrated. I took over the contract on that site and made sure that I kept Daniel Flick around. And he's going to join us today because I was a fan of his work. And now that I've met him and gotten to work with him for the last 6 weeks or so, I'm even a bigger fan of his work and the person that he is and the drive that he is. So he's going to join us today. We're going to preview OTAs. He's down in town in Atlanta. He'll join us for about 15 minutes. And then he's headed off to Flowery Branch for OTAs. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. We'll talk about some camp battles. We'll hit on some of the latest news and rumors that we've hit. I see one in here on Justin Jefferson. We'll address early and often right away. So let's get into this. I like saying hello to everybody. It's one of the reasons we go live on Mondays and Wednesdays. We like the interaction. It makes it a lot more fun. Dave says, happy Monday. Happy Monday to you, Dave. Victor says, good morning, guys. Hope you had an amazing weekend. The apathy by Terry Fontenot to improve this defense with veterans is pissing me off. So I did the math with Cousins and the Falcons in 2023 metrics. He says Cousins, his averages were 4,300 yards and 32 touchdowns. And the Falcons in rush in 2023 was 2,150 and 14 touchdowns, which was almost 6,500 total yards of offense. For them to be good, how would had to be for this team, how bad would the defense have to be for this team to lose the division? I think part of that, Victor, is I think the defense last year wasn't as good as the overall numbers. The lack of pressure was going to tell against better teams. And you saw it happen sometimes, when they're going against that 3-game stretch that really sealed Arthur Smith's fate last year when he went to Arizona and blew the game against the first start against Kyler Murray, his first time back from a knee injury. The game at home against, was it Jalen Hall? And then here comes Joshua Dobbs off the MARTA train, and he's drawing plays in the rubber pellets, losing to that one. The Hall of Fame performance from Will Levis in Tennessee. It was too fluctuating, so I don't think the defense was really as good as some of the numbers were last year, just because people knew the offense was that bad. They could sit back and wait for a mistake, wait for the turnover, and they didn't have to attack. I think you'll see more attacking. I think the defense could regress some, but the offense should be much better. But there's a reason why the Atlanta Falcons are favorites for this division, for sure. And you mentioned the weekend. I had an amazing weekend. My 14-year-old hit his first walk-off home run. I've got some pretty sweet video of it too. 2-run walk-off home run, and that was pretty cool. I've heard major leaguers say they'd never hit a walk-off home run. So doing it on Saturday morning was pretty cool. So want to bring in my special guest. Here he is, Daniel Flick, allfalcons.com. Writer extraordinary. He is a very talented young writer, and I'm looking forward to working with him and watching his career grow over the next decade or so. Daniel, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I appreciate that, Scott. You know what? I'll say groggy is probably a very, very good word. Worn out, excited, happy to be on, and ready to roll, man. Ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah, he drove in. Where did you drive in from? Arkansas or Indiana this time?
This time was Bloomington, Indiana. So a nice little 9 hours yesterday. Throw in another hour of stops. Was on the road for about 10 hours yesterday. But hey, man, I'm thrilled to be here.
When we talk about grinding, this is what we're talking about. This is his third time down for camp. Was it rookie mini camp, OTAs, and now mini camp that you've been down to?
Yep.
So let's hit on a couple again. I want to say hello to to some of the folks in here. Make You Fumble says trade AJ Terrell. Well, I don't know that that's going to happen. I am looking forward to this year, though. Harry Marshall Wood says, feels like weeks since I caught y'all live. We've missed some in here and there, too. Brad Clark and Jay says, good morning. Island Mike is here. He says, morning. Good morning to you. And yes, Daniel is here. So at rookie minicamp, at OTAs, what is your just off the hoof first impressions of watching Michael Penix throw so far?
The one thing I've told everybody, I am really, really hopeful that whenever he throws a pass on the sideline where I'm standing, that there ends up at some point a receiver puts their hands in front of me and him, because he has such a strong arm that if I get hit, I will probably be feeling it for a few days. That's my initial thought. He can really, really spin it. I've heard people just kind of mention with him just how much velocity it leaves his hand with, and it's real. Watching him throw up close, it is for sure a real thing. I also think at times, his accuracy has kind of fluctuated. At times he's been high quite a bit, missed high a lot. But again, you can see the arm talent, and you can also see the way that his, the other QBs in that room really, really like him and really have rallied around him. And I've really enjoyed kind of seeing that part of it. He's very intentional about trying to establish himself as a leader, which pretty big positive. But I also think he's in that strange situation, right, of how do I try to establish myself in that role, even though I won't actually rise and hold that role for another, till probably 2026,
Yeah.
So I think he's managed that well. I do think he's managed that well. And while not perfect so far, the arm talent is very apparent. The intangibles are very apparent. And I think all things told, through his first month in Flowery Branch, it's all positive so far.
Well, that's good. Now, the other thing I like to say sometimes, I don't get too high or too low based on what they're doing in shorts and, and shirts out there. It's basically a glorified install, walkthrough, et cetera, et cetera. However, you've got a couple guys that have, one for sure coming off a big injury in Kirk Cousins, and another one who battled injury in Kyle Pitts last year, who was kind of quietly still trying to battle back from that knee, the injury he had from that, it was a legal tackle, but it shouldn't be, from was that Harris out of the safety from Chicago, goes low from behind out in the open field. That tackle should be illegal. If they're making any tackle illegal, that one should be illegal. But let's start with Kirk Cousins. Now, I've seen some of the clips. You turned in some video for us over on the site that we've put up and stuff. But that's just a few. That's not 40, 50 throws that you've seen. How has Kirk Cousins looked out there?
I think I would say exactly how you would expect a 4-time Pro Bowler to look. His veteran presence, I mean, he is precise, man. And I think Mooney was saying a few weeks ago, like, hey, you leave your route and it's just there. It's on you. Like, if you win, the ball will be on the spot, right there. And so for me, watching him, it's very easy, seeing just how pinpoint he is, especially from last year and all the who threw that jokes on Twitter. There will not be that problem this year. But he is so precise with everything. And the same things I mentioned with Michael, you can see it with Kirk too, of just how well respected he is already. And the ways, the methods with which he's tried to establish himself in that locker room, has been very, very intentional, very impressive. He organized a whole John Gruden trip with Mooney and London and Pitts, and they took like a flight down, 3 or 4 hours there in Tampa. And it was a really good icebreaker. And it's small things like that. I think it was a week before OTAs, where you can really see, like, okay, hey, like, this guy, like, he is everything. He is legit. What they wanted out of him so far, a really steadying presence. He has been. And, I think health-wise, he's really ahead of schedule, I would say, as well. If not ahead, he's certainly on track. Should be completely fine week 1. And I also think, just as far as camp, I have not seen him miss very many throws at all. Like, if it really, especially considering he's only been really throwing for about a month and a half now. And again, a lot of that's been pretty light walkthrough stuff. But when it's been like relatively intense 7-on-7, relatively intense 11-on-11. He's been impressive, precise, and again, I think everything that you would want out of a veteran quarterback.
Yeah, I just again, that's what I want to learn watching this stuff is, how does will he plant on that? You've heard him talk about it, saying, the mental aspect of being there. Do I trust? Am I driving off of my back foot like I normally do? And if not, why not? Is it, I don't trust it? Is it sore? All those things. But the thing is he looks good to go. I mean, I'm sure he's not quite yet, but he looks fine. You wouldn't notice that. You wouldn't think that anything was wrong. If you didn't know any better, you wouldn't think he was coming off an injury. And that's a good thing. That's about the best thing I can say for it. He still has 3 months. There's 3 months to the first week of the season. That's really impressive. Now, Todd's coming in. You had the story on this yesterday over on All Falcons from Adam Schefter. He says, Scott and Daniel, we about to lose first round picks, maybe one. And why? Why did we create QB drama and did not need to happen? So tell us the story, the tampering charges that came with the Falcons and Kirk Cousins and Minnesota Vikings look like they're about to become, I don't want to say resolved because that means that's almost like a positive thing. But I think the punishment, because I expect the Falcons to be punished for this, is about to come down. What can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the overall story, when Kirk had his intro Wednesday night of free agency week, he went up there and mentioned that he had contact with Atlanta's head athletic trainer on Tuesday. And as a player, you are not allowed to have contact with a team personnel or anybody within that organization until 4 p.m. Wednesday when free agency officially opens. He went up and openly, said like, "Hey guys, I spoke with this guy yesterday while they were still in the legal negotiating period, which is meant for agents and the organization." So you have it on record that he blatantly said, like, yeah, this happened. He openly admitted to tampering, unfortunately, for Atlanta. What I would expect from this situation, I've kind of felt like a second round pick has been the most likely outcome just from, I don't have any hard information on that. It's just more of what I would expect out of that. I would like to hear your take on that as well, Scott. Just a round one pick to me in this spot would seem a little intense, but I would also understand it considering the nature of like, hey, this is a high profile free agent, pretty important guy. And again, there is pretty blatant stuff out there. But again,
I agree with you on this.
Round two pick.
I agree with you. I was thinking it would come somewhere in between the two that were mentioned, that Adam Schefter mentions every time he writes this story, and that you put in the story on All Falcons yesterday. The Miami Dolphins, I don't think it rises to the level of the Miami Dolphins, but I think it might be a little bit worse considering the player involved and, the number one free agency and $100 million than it was with the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a first and change, and then that was like a third and change. So I think it comes somewhere in between there, and a second round pick sounds about right. Could it be more than that? Sure, of course. Could it be less? Maybe. But I don't think they're not coming out of this unscathed. That's just not going to happen. So I think a second round pick sounds about right. Is it second and a day 3? Maybe. But I agree with you. I feel like that sounds about right as well. Now, we're not going to keep you long. I know you want to get going. As you head over to minicamp, I'll ask you twice so you don't have to remember the first one. What's the first thing you're looking for when you get there? What are you most excited about seeing when you're there, just other than just being there and it's football time again and it's a gorgeous day in the Metro Atlanta area today?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I've really enjoyed so far at camp is just seeing the energy that Raheem Morris provides. It's such a loose group, but a very intentional, enthusiastic group. And it's just really fun watching them work, I would say. That's one thing. I'd say the other thing up there, watching the QBs throw is very enjoyable for me as well. It's just a very, very good group. You got guys like John Paddock out there who like watching him throw. It's like, hey, this guy actually is relatively like talented. Like he's kind of legit, in my personal opinion. And it's like that's your number 4. And so I enjoy watching them throw quite a bit. The most exciting period for me, I love a good 7-on-7, man. Love a good 7-on-7. And it's just really fun watching the QBs throw in what I would call a relatively competitive atmosphere. And And I think you can see quite a bit about where Atlanta stands offensively in that time as well. And just kind of seeing some of the route concepts that they've run that maybe weren't there last year. I've seen Drake London use on like pretty nearsighted drag routes quite more often this year than I think anybody's seen him, throughout his first few years here. So it's small takeaways, but
that's because you're afraid to throw the ball over the middle when you're not accurate. If you throw, you mentioned, Michael Penix is one of those guys, but if you throw a ball high over the middle, it's an interception, and if it's low, then it's not getting past the line of scrimmage. So if you're not comfortable with your quarterbacks, you're not throwing those drag routes too often, because those are high risk, high reward types of throws. And you're hoping you mitigate the risk with a more accurate quarterback.
Yeah, and again, they have hit on a lot of those so far. One thing that I want to say Mooney said that he hates is checkdowns in 11 on 11 or 7 on 7. Those are not checkdowns, of course. But again, if you're Mooney and you're running a route about 10, 15 yards away and you see London rolling, right in front of your QB there, whoever, because again, they have pretty frequent rotations there as well with that. But you want it completed if you're Mooney. He said that Kirk knows not to throw checkdowns because it makes Mooney mad in a third-person perspective, which I personally, that was a highlight for me. I love a good third-person perspective, and I thought it was funny the way that he phrased it.
Yeah, I don't mind checkdowns in games, but in 7 on 7s, get greedy.
Yeah.
Know he's there. Okay, I had that if I needed it, but get greedy. Nobody's learning anything if you're just throwing checkdowns the whole time in 7 on 7s. I want to see you catch the ball. I want to see you throw the ball. I want to see him cover. And I don't get to see any of that if you just dump it off. So I agree with him. Well, listen, I appreciate you joining us this morning. I'm going to let you get out of here. And we look forward to your takeaways and all the stories that come out of the mini camp when you're there. Keep up the great work, my friend, and have an awesome day in Flowery Branch today. And we'll see you soon. I
appreciate you, Scott. I'll see you later, man.
All right, that's Daniel Flick. Daniel Flick is an extremely talented, and I don't just throw those things out. He's young, he's talented, and I'm looking forward to working with him a lot over the course of the future. I was very happy that he decided to stay on. He was already on the Sports Illustrated group, and he decided to stay on when I took over the Falcon site there, and I'm thrilled for it. So, want to get back into the chat to see what's on your mind. We're only about 20 minutes into this thing. We'll go about 20 or more. As we get going, it looks like Victor is in the house as well. He says, it's been a while. Oh, I love those bikes. I miss my motorcycles so much. It hurts. Been a minute since I was able to join in the mornings. Just happy to be here with y'all. John Harrell, I like this question. He says, good morning, Scott, Nick, and the crew. Tacoma, Washington bound. We'll travel safe. And be safe when you're there. You do some high-speed stuff. So what's y'all's take on the Justin Jefferson rumors? John, we helped stoke this, and it was basically, I think it all started out of a Bleacher Report rumor of, not a rumor, but just this might make sense type of thing. And Dave Holcomb wrote it up for all Falcons, and I basically said, this is good, but shoot it down. And when I put it out there on social media, I'm like, listen, this is out there in the ether somewhere, but nobody would take this deal. It was a first, a fourth, and Drake London to the Vikings for Justin Jefferson. That was the proposal. Would the Falcons do that deal? I don't know, because then you're going to have to come up with about $100 million guaranteed, 5 years, 35. What's that end up being? 70, 140, about $185 million for a receiver with 100 guaranteed on that. It's going to be 35 a year, 3-year deal with options. That's how they work. So when I say what the deal is, I like to say, what's the guaranteed money divided by how long you are tied to that guy. So for me, Kirk Cousins' deal is really a 2-year, $100 million deal, because that's his guaranteed money, and you can move on from that in year 3. I don't know. It makes me nervous. I'm much more conservative than that when it comes to team building. That, yes, Justin Jefferson might be the best player in football right now. Flat out. He's in the discussion. But man, it's football, dude. You're one injury away, and he's had a couple, from taking 15% of your cap and flushing it down the toilet because he's not on the field anymore. And you're giving up a young ascending talent in Drake London and a first-round pick. That's a lot. So if it was one or the other, free agency, I'd say, okay, let's do it. If it's the trade and a rookie contract, I'd say, okay, let's do it. The combination of them both, no thank you. Now, on top of that, word around the campfire going around is that there are multiple teams lining up that would pay 3 first-round draft picks to the Minnesota Vikings for the rights to Justin Jefferson right now. That's probably not as good as Drake London we think he is and can be. It's Drake London and a first and a fourth. That's not 3 first-round draft picks, not yet. It's cost control, it's cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the Vikings, if they decide to move on from Justin Jefferson, can get a better deal than that if they want to. And Justin Jefferson really doesn't have any say in the matter because he's under his rookie contract. So it was put out there as, hey, this might make sense for both parties. I don't think it makes sense for either party. So those are my thoughts on that one, but I appreciate you asking. And I say no. Everybody says no to that deal, though it was kind of fun. Red Swarm is here. He says, good morning. Here's a coffee emoji. You know, I'll drink to that. I got my Lion coffee this morning. Good morning, Scott, Nick, and Daniel, and all my friends in the chat. Little behind the scenes here. Daniel's actually at my house. He was in the room behind me. There's too big of an echo, and I don't have a 2-camera setup. He's staying with me while he's here. So he's on his way out the door, and I'm glad to have him here. I think I'm 30 years older than him. Love that kid. He works hard. He doesn't take any assumptions for anything. There's no entitlement at all. He just works, and he's good. Love it. Love that kid. Roger Cook, afternoon, Scott. Hope everything's well across the pond for you over there. Good to see you. Harry Marshall Wood is here. Morning, peeps. Make you fumble. He's here. I'm here. And I think we already talked about trading AJ Terrell. That might be a bit much for me. We'll see. I'm expecting a big year from AJ Terrell. I really am. And if it's not a big year, then it's a quiet year where they're attacking the other thing and nobody wants to mess with AJ Terrell anymore. So we might be on that one. Victor, good to see you. I was on Victor's podcast too. I'm glad you had Daniel on there. He's really good. Says we had Daniel on the Play Action podcast. He's excellent. Really enjoy his content. Give him a follow. His Twitter page is in the description of all the chats wherever you happen to be watching. It's in the chat. Go give him a follow over on X. Brian Greenleaf, good to see you. And yes, he does have a good head on his shoulders. JB is here. Rise up. I think I said hey to Jay, but if I didn't, good morning. Good morning to you, Jay. Hope you're doing well. I don't know about the punter from Texas. I haven't followed that too much, to be honest with you. Well, Marcus, I'm looking at your thumbnail here, and I'm getting the bird. That's the dirty bird right there this morning. He says, you think we can see a trade for an elite pass rusher? You know, we got quotes on All Falcons. Jesse Pates saying, I don't think we're done. The easiest move to make is the one that never gets made. It's a lot more likely that nothing gets done than something. I know that's poetic. But whenever it comes down to, hey, Scott, what do you think is going to happen? I always go on the side of no deal. Like, do you think this guy's going to sign? Who do you think this guy is going to end up with next year? The team he's already on. It's a lot harder to make a deal than it is to turn one down. There's just too many parties involved for that to happen until you really start seeing the smoke signals. Like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, when the Denver Broncos were flirting, they hired Nathaniel Hackett. They were flirting with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, where do you think he's going to end up? I was like, I think he's still going to end up in Green Bay. It's just look at the cost on that. Then the next year, there was a lot of smoke. I'm like, okay, he's out of here now. You can just feel it. I don't know that the Falcons have the stomach. Hell, they might not be allowed to trade any picks right now to try and get an elite pass rusher. It's like, no, we're not allowed to trade our second-round pick yet. We have to wait for the NFL to rule on this tampering charges. So we'll have to wait on that one. But Marcus, Falcons fans, I don't think they've had their chances. They've had their chances. If they were gonna give up some resources, why not go Montez Sweat last year? Who ended up with the Bears and signed a new contract. There's your elite pass rusher, and they decided not to. They held off, and then they doubled down on quarterback in the offseason. And I think it was it was Victor at the beginning saying they haven't really done a lot to immediately improve the defensive side of the ball. Now, we got on into this in the draft, right after the draft, talking about, listen, this draft makes sense if you throw out the win now mentality. This is a 2021 draft. This is a build for the future draft. You got your quarterback, you got your front 7 players on defense. A lot of them, those are guys that don't typically contribute right away and on a big level. They're not immediate impact players. They're year 2, year 3, year 4 type of guys. So pass rusher, I don't see it happening. It should have happened already if it was going to happen. And going back to Todd, the cost, depending on, it's not even depending, they're going to lose something on this, but I don't think anybody can say the Falcons didn't overinvest in the quarterback position. When you talk about the money for Kirk Cousins, that it's going to cost you a draft pick, and then drafting Michael Penix Jr. It will feel good if they go out and start winning and winning big. There will end up being questions like, man, this team's 11-5, 11-6 with Kirk Cousins, and their first round pick hasn't played it down. What would Malik Neighbors have done? There will always be those questions. Or, if your defense is struggling, you're keeping an eye on Dallas Turner. Or what would that $100 million guaranteed have gone into if you would address the defense? Those are always going to be there. But if Kirk Cousins plays well and there's a seamless handoff, no pun intended, to Michael Penix, then it will be okay. And I know some of y'all get on me about this, and that's okay. We can have this discussion another day. The reason why the Falcons didn't get more shtick for overpaying for Julio Jones, because Julio Jones was great. Because he was great. So that was a team that didn't need a receiver. They needed offensive line and defense. They had just given up 48 points and didn't force the Green Bay Packers to punt as a 13-3 team at home. And they got blown out, and their answer was to trade 5 picks for a receiver. To me, that was just mind-blowing. They traded him to the Cleveland Browns, who were a dumpster fire of an organization and didn't know how to use those picks, so that comes off that way. And then Julio Jones is a Hall of Famer. I still don't think it was the right move for the team at that time, and they've never been 13-3 again. That was a high point as far as regular season goes. But that's a different discussion, and I see both sides, because Julio Jones, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the greatest Falcon of all time across a long enough timeline. When you put up talent, production, et cetera, et cetera. So doesn't mean I like Julio, but that team needed defensive playmakers to take the next step, not a wide receiver on that. And the Falcons, I feel like Michael Penix was probably the answer. I think they should have gone Michael Penix before and then put some money into, but that's different here, because you're going to end up losing. It's $100 million guaranteed, and you're probably going to lose a pick. That's expensive. Kirk Cousins is going to end up being really expensive for this team. But the answer should be in pretty soon. And that's the good news. Just get it behind you. I don't think anybody's really too worried about it. I think almost all Falcons fans, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not worried about a second round pick right now. We're worried about, how does Kirk Cousins look? How does Michael Pittman? That's another good receiver. How does Kyle Pitts look? How does Drake London look? What's Bijan doing out there? I know he hasn't been out there with an ankle niggle right now, but how are we going to use him? What about the rookies? That's where our focus is right now. And if it comes out in June that you lose a second round pick, nobody's really going to be all that upset about it, especially if Kirk Cousins plays at a Pro Bowl level like he did last year. Keith Brugman, good to see you. He says, with the obvious upgrade at quarterback, which skill position player will benefit the most? That's a great question. And I think there will be several answers in this one, but for me, the answer is going to be Kyle Pitts. Drake London put up decent numbers, not great numbers, but has put up decent numbers and has been the primary receiver the last 2 years. Kyle Pitts was the number one by the middle of his rookie season, was a primary target, him and Russell Gage. But he's fallen off even before he got hurt. That was like week 11, and he was not being integrated into the offense the first half of his second year. Sophomore slump, call it what you want. Part of that's because the quarterbacks are inaccurate. Now, I've always said one of my biases when scouting players is I like bigger receivers. They're always open. But if you overthrow them, you can't get anything done because the ball's out of reach. If you underthrow them, then the defensive back, you take away the guy's size advantage. So Kyle Pitts was really good with an accurate quarterback because he could get it in that window. I mean, he's got a 7-foot wingspan. He's got, I think, longer than that. It's like 7 and change of a catching radius. He's a pterodactyl out there. Remember the quote last year, I think, of Desmond Ridder about this time last year? It's really hard to miss these guys as big as they are. Well, you did. My answer to this one, Keith, and I want to see what some of y'all say, is Kyle Pitts is the one that is going to benefit the most. I think Drake London, I think they all will, but I think Kyle Pitts is the one that starts becoming the guy that he was drafted to be. Brandon Yowler, it is great to see you. Thank you for breaking the ice on the super chat, our first super of the day. Thank you, my friend. He says, what are your looks on the preseason training? Who is the standouts besides, because the Bears are talking how Williams isn't doing so hot, maybe a bust. Preseason training, again, these are glorified walkthroughs, okay? And Brandon, if you put this in long enough ago, apologies, it took me a second to get to it, that you already heard me talk about. If you were at the beginning, you heard us talking about we don't want to see check downs in 7-on-7, 11-on-11s. I don't want to see check downs, especially 7-on-7s. They're not really doing 11-v-11 right now because there's no contact. I don't want to see a check down for my quarterbacks in practice like that. The reason why is because I want to see my corners cover. I want to see my safeties in coverage. I want to see my wide receivers make a play. I know my running back can catch the ball out of the backfield. That is a given. I don't need the defenders to throw a screen pass. I don't. So if I'm in a 7-on-7 and I'm throwing the ball into traffic and I'm throwing interceptions and I'm not looking, okay, that's fine. What's the context here? Because again, it's Falcon on Falcon. Okay. You have to ask both sides of the question of the equation to get the answer. Am I encouraging my quarterback to take chances? I would. I don't want to check down, maybe every so often, just, throw the screen, fine, dump it off. Take what they give you on this one. We're just trying to move the chains. We're trying to kill the clock. It's a 2-minute drill. We're trying to get at time, but I want you to push the envelope. Okay. I want you to make the hard throws. If I don't make the tight window throws and the hard throws in practice, how the hell am I going to make them in games? I'm not worried about Caleb Williams. I'm really not. When it comes to who's looking good in practice, Kyle Pitts has looked really good. He's looking healthy. And Kirk Cousins has looked really good. He's looked healthy. But remember, that's all you are really going to learn about these guys, comparatively speaking, to what you've already seen from them in the past on the football field, because they're not going full speed. They're not going pads. They're not hitting. There's no contact. So what you really want to see is how healthy are they? How is their movement? Are they moving okay? So, Brandon, my question on this is Kirk Cousins looks healthy. Kyle Pitts looks healthy. Those are your two biggest takeaways from rookie minicamp and OTA so far. Now, when they get to summer, when the pads come on, now we'll start. Now we separate the men from the boys. Now we get to find out, has Ebiketie taken the next step? But again, remember, I'm controlling the outcomes as the coach. Okay. Oh man, he completed 11 passes in a row. We only rushed 3 the whole time. There wasn't any blitzing going on because we were trying to get the offense going. Man, Arnold Ebiketie had like 10 sacks. Was that because he's gotten better? Or is it because Caleb McGarry looks awful? You're going Falcon on Falcon. So until you start playing against people that are in a different uniform, you really don't know for sure. A follow-up on let me see here. Joe Smith. Joe, what do you got to say here? He says, I can't believe you guys are so negative of what you got out of the draft on the defensive side of things. No, that's I'm not sure who all if I'm you guys. Trice was a steal. It just highlights most of y'all weren't watching West Coast ball the last 2 years. Penix was also the best picks you got for the future. Kirk Cousins is the only QB with only one playoff win that ever seen get $100 million guaranteed money. Now that's crazy. All right, Joe, I want to hit on this real quick on all of them. Appreciate you coming in, Joe. Love that dog up there. And I'm going to take this down because it's covering half my face. I can still see it over on this side. Not negative on the draft, okay? What I'm saying is Braylon Trice is a third-round pick as an edge rusher, and with his measurables, isn't expected to come in and be a 10-sack guy as a rookie. He's just not, okay? Brandon Dorless, he's going to be a backup. Zion Lowe out of Georgia, he's going to be a reserve. Orohiro, second round pick, traded up for him. That was kind of expensive too. He's going to be a backup. Okay. Michael Penix, he's going to be a backup. You see a pattern here? You see a pattern? This was a draft for the future. You never hear me complaining. The 40 years I've been watching drafts about getting 300-pound guys of fortifying the trenches. But these guys were not drafted to be instant impact players. Not Michael Penix, not Ruka Orohiro, not Braylon Trice. They're for the future type of drafts. And I'm not negative on those. My expectations for them in 2024 are reserve roles. That's what my expectations are. When we get to 2025, 2026, now we'll talk about it. Now we'll talk about how good they are and how good they can be. But there isn't a one of these guys that you can pencil in as a starter. Not a one. And that's okay. When we start talking draft grades, and we did this the day after draft grades came out, we talked about what are grades for. Did you get starters out of this, etc.? And the answer for the Falcons is no. They use their number 8 pick on a guy they said is going to be the number 2. Okay, he's not going to help a whole lot in 2024 unless Cousins gets hurt. But the expectations are no. So this draft class was a draft for the future, not for the now. And that's okay. That's okay. That's not negative on it. But I kind of think that signing Kirk Cousins was not my number one move. Getting a rookie quarterback, I liked a veteran, a cheaper veteran, and a rookie quarterback was my number one move. But I wanted a rookie quarterback coming out of this draft. We can go back to January and say, what are your priorities? What do you want to see happen? So on that one, I wouldn't, I think I hope I've cleared that up a little bit. I like the draft. I just don't expect to see them doing a whole lot in 2024. That's all right. That's all right. Anonymous reviewer, what are the odds of Calais Campbell and Julio Jones coming back? I would say slim and none. And the big dude, the one that's 6'8", 300 pounds, that's slim. And then Julio Jones is the none. The next time we see Julio Jones, it will in Atlanta, unless he's on the sidelines for another team, will be to come to put his jersey into the Ring of Fame or Ring of Honor. I'm not sure what the Falcons call it. Put his jersey in the rafters is the next time for Julio Jones. I think Julio Jones is done. I think he's been done for 3 or 4 years now. Just his body. The Falcons used him like a running back. And a lot of times people are like, where's Julio Jones? How come he doesn't have more touchdowns? Well, because he's got 6 catches for 70 yards on slip screens to get him into the red zone. And now he's over getting his elbow iced and he's gassing, getting oxygen while they're in the red zone. Can't tell you how many times that happened. So I think Julio is finished, and he will get a gold jacket and be a Hall of Famer, and he will be arguably the greatest Atlanta Falcon of all time. I can look at this draft and think that I don't think Calais Campbell is going to come back. I just went through a whole bunch of defensive linemen, 4 of them. You went through 4 defensive linemen. in the draft, and you got Grady Jarrett coming back. You got David Onyemata, Taquan Graham. I don't think Calais Campbell is coming back. Is my take on this. So we will see. Jay Gribbin says trade Heineke and then John Paddock for a number 3 QB. Speaking of over-investing in the quarterback room, before the draft, the Falcons redid Taylor Heineke's contract to give him basically an extra $1 million guaranteed. So I think, now forgive me if I'm wrong because I'm live, but I might be off a little bit on this. I think he was due 9. It was either 7 or 9 with a $2 million dead cap, which means, okay, you're probably going to get cut. And that means the Falcons could save $7 million if they cut him. They didn't cut him. They restructured him, which basically means they cut him and re-signed him, which added another $1 million to his deal. So if if they get rid of him, it will end up costing them $3 million instead of 2. If he stays, it will cost him more than that. It'll cost him a salary. So why would you give him another $1 million guaranteed? One, you weren't sure you're going to take Michael Penix at the time, and having Kirk Cousins, again, a lot of investment into the quarterback room. But if you can flip him, Falcons fans, for a draft pick, even a swap, that might be worth $1 million. What's a 6th round pick worth? If I'm able to trade him to someplace in August that needs a reserve quarterback, because he doesn't need to be a number 3. He's a better quarterback than a 3rd string quarterback. He could start for some teams, and he's absolutely should be the number 2 in some places. And nobody in Atlanta wants him to be the number 2. None. There isn't a soul other than the Heinekes that want him taking a single rep away from Michael Penix. Your 24-year-old prize rookie needs to be taking every single rep he can. Period. I don't want him number 2, and he's too good to be number 3. If Paddock can play and the early reports are good, he can be number 3 and see what you can get for Heineke. I have a hard time finding a spot for Taylor Heineke on the 53, and he's not going to be cut and clear waivers and re-signed on the practice squad. That would surprise me. He's too good for that. He should be a number 2 in this league, and he's not going to be a number 2 in Atlanta. Robbie Red, I agree with you. Tyler Algier is still an amazing running back and could be an RB1 on most teams. Yeah, the running back room in Atlanta is solid. Very, very good talent and depth there. Keith and Ellen Johnson, I see you coming in with some stars over there. Certainly appreciate it. He says he's enjoying the show. Thank you for some stars on Facebook. And Keith Brugman also said when we were talking about it, was he thinks that Bijan Robinson could be the guy. I can't find it in the chat here, but I see it over here on Facebook. He says, I'll go a different route. I think Bijan Robinson, I think that even the threat of a passing game will give the running game more to open up. See, for the inconsistencies of his use, Bijan still had a pretty damn good season last year. I think he was top 6 or 7 in yards from scrimmage, and he led all rookies in yards for scrimmage last year. He had about 1,500 yards and 6 or 7, 8 touchdowns. I don't have it right in front of me. And going into the season last year, we said with a number 8 pick, if you're going to use a number 8 pick on a running back, he needs to have 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's where he needs to be to justify that selection. He was pretty damn close. Now, can he get in the end zone more? Yes, they all can. Drake London, Kyle Pitts included. Does he go for 2,000 yards from scrimmage? Maybe. As I was quoted, someone quoted me that I guess I say this a lot. Maybe. 2,000 yards for scrimmage and 15 touchdowns. That's why you take a running back in the top 10, isn't it? To do something like that. But why do you take a tight end at number 4? The highest tight end of all time, unless he's a guy who you think can go from the difference is what did Kyle Pitts have last year? I feel like he was like 350 yards or something. It might not have been quite that bad, but he had more yards in his rookie season than he's had in the last 2 years combined. And I know there's been some injuries in there, but he's probably played 27 games. He has started 25 games. He's played 27 games. He ended up with 700 yards last year. So maybe not a meteoric leap, but I think he should be back in the 1,000 range. Kyle Pitts should be back in the 1,000, and he only has 6 career touchdowns. I want 6 from him this year. I want him to double, at least double his touchdown. I don't think you can say the same thing for Bijan Robinson. Would it totally shock you if Kyle Pitts went from 667 and 3 touchdowns to 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns? Would it totally shock you if Kyle Pitts doubled his numbers? It wouldn't me. Now, Bijan, on the other hand, let me see. I think he's in the 1,400 range. He had, he rushed for just a tick under 1,000, 976 yards, and he had just under 500 yards. So he was right. He was 30 yards under 1,500 from scrimmage with 8 touchdowns. Yeah, he ain't doubling that. He ain't going 3,000 yards from scrimmage. There might be an incremental increase, but Bijan had a pretty big season last year. It's just what did I post when I wrote up the article? It was something along the lines of he had 7 games where he had like 11 or less carries, and he only had 4 where he had 15 or more. So they all should be better. But I'm still going with I'm still going to go with Kyle Pitts has the biggest boost in 2024 on this. Kevin says, Kevin Future Business says, I believe London's upside and potential can equal or even surpass Jefferson's with good quarterback play. I think in total numbers, I'll give you a benefit of the doubt on that just because of the injuries. But brother, he had 1,800 yards in 2022 on 128 catches. I don't think anybody on this team is going to have 128 catches. So let's back it down a notch. Can he go with 8 touchdowns? Can he go 14.1 yards per catch and score 8 touchdowns? Yeah, he can. He can. Will he get 184 targets? No, he won't. So the volume is going to stick him there as far as the production. But you didn't say production. But as far as the production goes, and it's not just, his receiving success rate's not all that high. He was just a super high volume, which may be one of the reasons he battled injury the next year. It's kind of funny how that works out, isn't it? You get 130 catches and you're not healthy the next year. So, yes. Ooh, that's a bold shout, dude. But again, reason why for one player, I wouldn't make that trade. I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't put the contract into Justin Jefferson. I wouldn't give up on Drake London, and I wouldn't give up the first round pick. The combination of those, I probably wouldn't do that. So, and as Keith Brugman said over on Facebook, on a side note, the Ronald Acuna, yes, I know. Mad Mike Sports, good to see you, Mad Mike. He says, Scott, my brother agreed. Don't put too much into practice. Focus on what matters on the field. And we won't get to see that until September. My biggest takeaway from this is the assumption that we have competency in the building. And I know longtime Falcons fans, what happens when you've got assumption, you make an ass of you and me. I know, but the indications are good. The hires are good. The experience on the offensive side of the ball with the quarterback is good. I want health. That's what I want. The defense scares me more than the offense right now, which sounds strange considering how inept the offense was last year. But again, the assumption last year was that the offense was just really one piece away. Quarterback. They may have overinvested in the quarterback room, but by God, they have invested in the quarterback room. You cannot say that, man, you look at this team, how do they not know that quarterback is a problem? Oh, they knew. They knew for sure. Terry, good to see you. Get after him, coach. JB is asking about Anthony Johnson. I haven't seen anything of him, so I don't know on that, but didn't want to miss that missed your comment. Chris Walker, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. And Dave says, with the exception of Penix Jr., I'm expecting some form of contribution from these rookies. Yeah, of course. So am I. But in a reserve role as backups. And that's for me is, do I want Orohuro starting? No, because I want Onyemata and Grady Jarrett to be healthy. The only way Braylon Trice could force his way into a starting role. The only way I see any of the other guys starting is maybe if one of the wide receivers, is it Corey Washington? If he comes in, but he was drafted as a special teams guy. If is an injury, Braylon Trice for me is the only one that has a path to a starting role, performance based. Can he come in and win a job? Orohuro, Logue, Dorless, those guys, they're not going to be better right out of the gate than Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. It's just not going to happen. And even if it just won't, that's just factual. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to put it. Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata are two of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, and they're veterans. If they're healthy, they're playing. They're the number one. So I expect some form of contribution from all of them. So do I, but in a reserve role. And if Braylon Trice comes in and demands a starting role because of his performance, awesome. I'd be very excited about that. Let me see here. We're about to roll it up here, just about finish here. So if you got any burning desires, let me know. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and work my way up a little bit. There's comments Kirk made, Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I don't think. Wait, did Jordan Brown? Did this just happen? Did Justin Jefferson just get a 4-year, $140 million deal? I haven't checked. Let me hit my notifications on this because yes, they did. Okay, good shout. What was I saying? What did I say the numbers were going to be? About 35 million and probably 3 years, 100 guaranteed. So it's 4 years. There it is. I was dead on, not to toot my horn. I didn't have any source on this. I'm just good at reading the market and math. 4-year extension worth $140 million, $35 million a year with 110 guaranteed. So again, let's roll it back 30 minutes. That's a 3-year, $105 million deal with a club option. That's pretty awesome. So all of the talk that we had about Justin Jefferson, the only thing that you can take from that is he's going to get a 3-year deal worth about $100 million guaranteed. So that just broke. Good for him. Good for him. He's at $35 million a year. That's too rich for my blood for this team. They don't have that much room. I prefer the money spread out a little bit better. It makes me nervous to see all your money thrown into 2 or 3 guys. The quarterback, a wide receiver, and an offensive tackle. Hello, Jake Matthews, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan. What about the defense, guys? So on that note, I am just about to get out of here unless, like I said, anybody has Keith says no mile huddle today. Nick is babysitting this morning. That's why he's not here. Apologies. I didn't say that. Nick is babysitting today, but I'm going to get out of here. We've got mini camp coming. We'll be back on Wednesday. I've had a great day with y'all this morning. I hope y'all have had fun. Hit me up with any questions and comments after the fact. I always come to them. I'm kind of obsessive compulsive about those. Get your Lion coffee. And that's all I got for y'all today. I appreciate you being here. I'm glad you got to meet Daniel on my channel. He's working with me officially, and I'm proud to have him. Proud to have y'all here. And thanks for being here, everybody. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk more about what we've seen at minicamp and hopefully no injuries. Knock on that wood. We'll see y'all next time.